Welcome to the March 2018 Star Wars Canon Update. This month we saw the series finale of Star Wars Rebels, we got one new book, 8 new comics, and 8 new episodes of Forces of Destiny, so let's dive in. Star Wars Rebels aired its final episodes on March 5th. A Fool's Hope, family reunion, and farewell brought the story to what I think was a satisfying conclusion. I wouldn't place them in my very favorite episodes, but I was satisfied enough as to the answers we were given about the absence of Ezra and Thrawn during the events of the original trilogy. It also gave us some exciting teases about potential future stories, but I won't put all that in the canon update until they actually start happening. If you want to see my full review on the episodes, I'll have a link to that in the cards. The novelization for The Last Jedi delivers on the promise of its expanded edition subtitle by giving us more scenes and insight into the film. I'm going to provide my recommendation for it to 2 separate groups. Did you hate The Last Jedi? Reading this book will not change your mind, and it's not meant to anyway. Did you love The Last Jedi? Reading this book will probably make you love it even more. It's the same review I give to all novelizations. You can skip it and you're not going to miss out on anything major, but if you were curious about character motivations or maybe want to find some connections to the rest of the galaxy, there's plenty to enjoy here. Moving on to comics, let's start with my favorite every month, Darth Vader. Issue 13 began a new arc on Mon Cala as Vader and a couple of Inquisitors and a new legion of special troopers investigate reports of a surviving Jedi hiding out there. Raddus makes an appearance, as well as King Lee Char, who people have been asking me about for a long time. Well, we're starting to get some answers about him. The end of the issue teased that hiding Jedi, and I have to assume it's someone we know, or else they wouldn't have kept his or her face hidden. Something interesting also happened surrounding this issue. The opening crawl and Palpatine both claimed 3 years had passed since the end of the Clone Wars, yet the 6th brother was present, and he was supposed to have been killed 1 year after the Clone Wars in the Ahsoka book. Matt Martin of the story group quickly cleared everything up and said it was a misprint that should have said 1 year and that it's not to the day, just an estimate. The digital release has since been fixed, at least on Comixology where I read my comics, and I think it's worth pointing out that it is not the story group's job to keep us updated on Twitter, and I would like to thank Matt for going above and beyond there. Mistakes are going to happen. It's inevitable with this amount of content coming out every month, but the quick communication surrounding just a couple of words was great. Moving on to Star Wars issues 44 and 45, they are continuing the Mon Cala subplot about 20 years later. The rebels ask Mon Cala for more support, and they refuse, citing their captive king and the death of Raddus. So the rebels decide to break King Lee Char out of Imperial prison. I really like the connectivity of these 2 individual series telling the beginning and end of a story that spans decades. That's super cool. Issue 45 also made references to black holes along the Kessel Run, which we're very likely to see on screen in a couple of months. Zeb, Hera, and maybe Rex all appeared, and Luke met Hobby and Zeb Senesca for the first time. And they all gave a toast to their fallen pilot friends, including Biggs. This series is doing so much right that it makes the art style all the more frustrating, but as far as story goes, I'm into it. Dr. Aphra 18 went a little insane this month, introducing a number of new ideas. Some of them were really cool, and some of them were pretty far-fetched, even for this series. Aphra and her crew break into Hive Base 1, a Tarkin Initiative research facility. That was cool. Inside are a number of failed projects kept in cold storage. Some were cool, and some were pretty crazy. Their heist continues into the core thanks to a pretty awesome display of power by Tam Posla. But they are all apprehended by the Empire, and that final shot was just weird. But that's something I kinda respect about this series. They swing for the fences, and sometimes it doesn't always work. I see this as an extension of the Empire's anti-alien thinking, running brutal experiments on a host of non-humans just to see what happens. I think that's a good idea to run with, but some of the creatures they came up with were just a little goofy. But whatever, the story and the characters are still fun, and that's what matters most. Poe Dameron 25 is nearly bringing us to the timeline of The Force Awakens. Black Squadron recovers Lor Santeca, and he says he thinks he might know how to find Luke. I'm guessing next issue we'll get to see how he found that map, and we'll end with Poe receiving it on Jakku. This comic also had a little canon discrepancy in it. Snap Wexley marries Carrie Coon, a marriage which is also detailed in the Join the Resistance series. Now, I haven't read that series, so I can't speak to specifics, but from what I found out, Poe officiates the wedding in the book, and it's Leia in the comic. And also Adi Muva is present in the book, but he died a while ago in the comic. I would rationalize that Poe and Leia both just handled different parts of the ceremony, and one of the kids in the book just mistook a different Abednego for Adi, but again, I can't be too sure, so take my thoughts with a grain of salt. The second issue of the Thrawn adaptation was released, and it continues to be a very solid retelling of the book. Jody Houser still writes at the required quick pace, but it doesn't feel too fast. Luke Ross's art is still awesome, and I would love to see him get a longer lasting series. But I didn't notice any major additions to the story yet. Star Wars Adventures issues 7 and 8 were my favorite of this series so far. 7 specifically had a Shriv story in it, and Zeb said the word criffing, which is basically like dropping the F-bomb in Star Wars as far as I'm concerned. But as a whole, unless you've got kids you want to introduce to Star Wars, these stories aren't really targeted at most Star Wars fans. Speaking of, let's move on to Forces of Destiny. I was pretty lukewarm about the first season, wasn't offended by its existence by any means, but they also didn't add a whole lot. I have a different opinion about season 2. Most of the episodes were about the same, but 2 in particular were noteworthy. One featuring Padme, Anakin, and Ahsoka hinted that Ahsoka knew about her master's relationship with Padme. Another episode with Leia and Maz Kanata had cameos from Score and possibly Jackson, and told us how Leia got the Bosch disguise for Return of the Jedi. Also released this month was a written adaptation of some of Rey's Forces of Destiny stories, and the Last Jedi Jr. novel, storybook, and read-along story and CD. For Story of the Month, I think I have to give it to the Rebels series finale. I was relieved to be so satisfied by its ending, and the entire series gave us so many memorable moments in Star Wars that I think it deserves the win, even if the Darth Vader comic made me audibly gasp for the 13th issue in a row. But that's it for March. The Canon update will return on May 1st to cover the new Han Solo and Lando book, Last Shot, and 8 new comics. Until then, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and consider checking out my Patreon page. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.